Alliance Land Surveying.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the group chat this week. We got Johnny Valdez with Alliance Land Surveying. He's going to be presenting to us today about survey stuff, of course, and go through the whole thing. We want to thank you, Johnny, for taking your time. I know you took a big part of your busy time to help us out, so we appreciate it. So go ahead. The forum is yours. You can feel free to share your screen, whatever you need. We got some people hopping on too. You should be at the bottom. Just hit share. Yeah. Are you on a Mac? Are you in a PC or a Mac, Johnny? Thank you, Johnny. It's all yours. Appreciate it, man. Go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, I can start.
Yep.
Okay, I hope everybody's doing good today. Thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you so much, Andrew and ENV Title, for the invitation. My name is Johnny Valadez. I am with Alliance Land Surveyors. We are based out of San Antonio, Texas. We do provide services for land surveying in San Antonio and the surrounding counties. Great thing about us is we're locally owned and we are veteran owned. So we love to work with our realtor groups, our teams, and our title companies. We would really appreciate you sending us your next request to Alliance Land Surveying. You can do that by going to orders at alliancelandsurveyors.com. Today, we're going to be going over some information for you that will be useful. Something that you probably don't know about me is I just got my real estate license a few months ago. So I've spent over probably about 15 years in the survey field. So I am coming into real estate as a new person, but I've been around the market, so I've been around the industry. So I've put together some information that will help you in your journey. I think that we as agents don't need to have be an expert at every single thing, but we do need to know a little bit about what we're dealing with. And surveys is always questionable. I get a lot of questions all the time about surveys. So today I hope that you learned something that you can take with you and use on your journey and in your business. So we titled this Know Before You Close. So we're going to be going over land surveying for Texas real estate pros. So let's get into this.
Sweet.
Okay, so we're going to go over today the history of surveying. There's some ancient roots that are connected with surveying. A lot of people don't know about that, so we're going to touch on that briefly. The importance in real estate. We're going to touch on boundaries, legal protections, and also contracts. And then we're going to share some sample surveys with you. Lastly, we're going to test your knowledge a little bit. We're going to give some time for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, please hold on till we get to the Q&A part. You'll be free to answer any questions at that time. So something that you probably don't know is that most of our early presidents were land surveyors. People like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln had experience, and they actually were land surveyors. This is a unique type of trade that people had, and I find it an honor to be in this field because it started with such prominent figures as our early presidents. Mapping the Wild West was part of what we did. Planning cities, even the Mason-Dixon line, for example. Going a little further back, I've even studied where ancient Egyptians, this is going way back, actually divided up property lines by using ropes in a rope system. If you look at, if anybody here is a biblical scholar, there's even some parables that talk about boundaries and rocks and paths. And that was even referring to surveying and dividing up property. So why does survey matter in real estate? First of all, um, there's definitions that we can use for what a survey is. Basically, my definition, you want to know where your property is and where your lines are. That's very, very important, especially in selling real estate. We're going to cover some issues today on new builds. New builds, there's a whole lot of questions that come up about new builds, and we're going to cover that in a little moment on what to look for in new builds. Secondly, clarity in your transactions. We want to ensure your buyer that what is on that survey is actually theirs. You don't want to question, especially if they're moving into their forever property. They want to make sure that there's no problems, no issues that are involved in that property and moving into that property. Lastly, risk management, unknown boundaries. Sometimes when you're selling property, we don't know where boundaries are. I had a friend of mine a few years back was looking to purchase a property. The survey company that I worked for at the time went out and we surveyed this property. He thought he was buying over an acre. When we surveyed it, it was only a third of an acre. So that's a big difference. He would have never known that unless a survey was done prior to purchasing that property. Now think about that. They didn't want to pay for the survey. The seller didn't, so he actually paid for the survey and found out that that acre that he thought it was purchasing was not even an acre. It was actually a third of an acre. Really crazy things that happen. So you really want to get a survey because you want to avoid any legal problems. First thing that you want to do, as I mentioned before, is you want to discover and talk about what boundaries, where your boundary is, what type of issues that may be there in your boundary. You want to also prevent any type of disputes. Give you an example. I was working with a customer that called our office and he was complaining about his neighbor building a fence. This was in Terrell Hills, and if you know Terrell Hills here in San Antonio, a pretty prominent neighborhood. His issue was he believed that his neighbor was encroaching on his property. An encroachment is somebody coming into your property with not having permission to do so. So we went out and we did the survey prior. I went out and looked at what he was describing, and sure enough, the fence builder was encroaching his property on the right side by 1 foot. But one thing that he didn't give account for is on the left side, his rock wall was going into the neighbor's property by a foot. And we knew that by looking at the existing survey and looking at where the boundary pins were located. Sometimes, even in building fence, we got to keep in mind fence builders are not surveyors. So if you don't get a survey, you're taking a big risk. So what happened was we addressed this by going to the neighbor, asking him if he had an existing survey. Lo and behold, he actually did have an existing survey, and my company did the existing survey. So it was a simple resolution that came about. What happened is, because we did both surveys, we showed that to both homeowners, and they came up with a solution. Their solution was to do a boundary line agreement. Um, what a boundary line agreement is that the new boundary line was going to be the new fence, because this fence was really nice, and they said, you know what, we're going to get an attorney from the title company to write this up. We're going to agree between homeowners, property owners, that the new boundary is going to be the new fence. So everything wound up to be okay. Now I've seen people fight over a foot, literally get into fights and arguments over a foot. So this can be a messy issue, but in this situation, it came out favorable for both sides. So surveys also help prevent encroachments from fences and sheds. That one, you will never know what an encroachment is unless a survey shows it. So for the most part, you're going to save some money in the long run if you do get a survey. So if you're dealing with closings with title companies, I always encourage people to go through title. because one of the things that title does offer is survey insurance. Andrew can talk to you a little bit about that later on, but survey coverage is covered through the title insurance. The best coverage for your customer, I personally believe, is a brand new survey and title insurance. That's the best coverage available. So what does that do? In title, it gives us the legal description on the property, also improvement placements. It lets us know where all the improvements are placed on that property by looking at that survey. If there's any access information that's missing, maybe if you're dealing with the larger property, we're looking at easements, which gives us our next point. We want to know where those easements are located. And in real estate school, we had questions as for easements of appurtenance. We're going to get into that in just a moment, but just keep that in mind. So what does Alliance Land Surveyors provide for our customers? The first thing that we provide for in our surveys is peace of mind. We provide a survey that's legible, that's easy to read, and then you have somebody like me that can assist you if you have any questions. I do business development there at Alliance Land Surveyors. Love what I do. Love working with our realtor partners. The next thing is we protect our customers' interests. Our clients are protected. Prevent them by post-sale surprises. We want to let them know upfront what's on their property. We also offer a professional safeguard for our customers. We shield agents from any type of liability. We do carry E&O insurance, so any surveys that we do, we cover and we back up. Lastly, we provide preventative medicine in a way that avoids costly property disputes, like I mentioned earlier. Give you an example. Say your customer is purchasing a piece of land and there's no fences that are on that property. If he doesn't know any better and he wants to just start building a fence and he doesn't know where the boundary lines are, he could possibly or she could possibly start cutting up and also removing trees that belong to the neighbors. It's always a good idea to get a survey. That way you know where your lines are. It's very, very important. I'm going to go into some common survey questions that come up or could come up as you're going through your transactions. So let's talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about boundaries and encroachments issues. So in the photo that's listed on the left hand side, you see a tree that's there. So this particular neighborhood is a zero lot line neighborhood. That means that everything on the line belongs to both property owners. So zero lot line neighborhoods, you go out your side door and your neighbor's house is right there, right in front of you. So in this situation, a tree was in dispute. You can see that tree that's nice and full in that picture in the front. An issue came up because the tree was actually leaving leaves on their neighbor's property. So what solution this neighbor came up with was, I'm going to cut the tree in half. And look at the photo on the right hand side. That's actually what took place. They cut the tree in half because they didn't want an encroachment to occur.
It's kind of ridiculous, but hilarious too.
Yeah, really funny stuff that comes up. But people will do that. I personally have seen sidewalks and even driveways that have been cut up because they're encroaching on somebody else's property. Really crazy stuff. So we gotta look out for things like that. So in a boundary line feud, here's some issues that could come up. You're using an old survey. I have seen title companies, and it's just a common practice. I'm not talking down on title. I actually was in title for about a year myself. So it's just a common practice. In title, they're going to use an existing survey. So where's some issues that could come up when using an existing survey? The surveyor might have made a mistake that you don't catch. So equipment has changed over the years. So right now we're using the very best GPS systems that are available. We're using robotic systems out in the field. So this gives you a clearer, more concise survey that could be done. I've seen in old surveys that don't show the boundary lines correctly. So we're just kind of going off of what the old surveyors say. So what happens if you have an existing survey? What number one, what you can do, you got to realize how old that survey is. Now, I just want to bring up a question for everybody. Does anybody know how long a survey is good for in the state of Texas?
I don't want to steal it. 10 years.
10 years. Yes, Andrew, you are correct. 10 years. So after 10 years, the state allows survey companies to actually uh, dismiss all of their files. So for 10 years, it is good in the state of Texas. We're not held liable anymore as a survey company, so we can dismiss all of our files. So with that in mind, if you have a survey that's maybe 5 years, what I would do is I would call the existing surveyor, ask them to do an update. So what does the update do? It puts the new buyer's name on that survey, puts the new title company's name on that survey, and it allows the RPLS to make sure there's been any changes to that property. When the surveyor goes out to verify everything, they will list any changes that have been done. For example, maybe a pool was built in the backyard. Maybe there's a shed now that didn't exist before. It will be added to that survey. Really, really cool stuff. Okay, so some other things that could affect property line feuds. Some properties can be sold for loss due to boundary disputes. So we really want to avoid that by getting a updated survey or a new survey. I always tell people, when in doubt, please, please, please get a new survey. That way you protect your customer and you protect yourself. Okay, so what are some things that you can do to avoid disputes between yourself and, or I'm sorry, between your customer and their neighbors? Number one, prevention is the best cure. So maybe you have an issue that comes up, you have an existing survey, call that existing surveyor to try to answer any questions that you may have. A professional surveyor is going to tell you exactly where the lines are, not where they could be or not where they should be, but where they are. Um, Maybe you have two different surveys that are in question. That's that I've had people that have asked for a third opinion and gotten another surveyor involved to come and do a third survey. That happens very, very rarely, but it does happen sometimes. Okay, we're going to go into understanding easements and setback lines. So why is this important? Maybe you are going into a new build community. I think as of today, there was probably almost 10,000 new builds that were on the market in San Antonio alone. That's a lot of real estate that's going to be sold, hopefully between now and this next year. So in a new build community, pretty much the fences are up, but sometimes they're not. So what happens when you don't know where your boundary lines are? Maybe if you decide to build because somebody has purchased that property, they don't know where to put a fence. It's always good to ask that surveyor to mark your boundary lines. That way you know exactly where your boundary lines are. Easements could be an issue that come up also. Say for example, your customer, your client wants to build an outdoor shed. You want to know exactly where the easements are. Why? Because if you build that shed on an easement, it could affect them in the long run. For example, say an easement is going across the back line of the property, and that's why you want to put your shed. You put your shed there, and you put a permanent concrete down before you put your shed on there. If there's a break in that line, whatever company is governing that easement will charge that homeowner to move that shed because there's a permanent foundation that's there. So always keep that in mind. Easements are not visible. So the survey will help you to understand where the easements are. Also, utilities. Utility lines sometimes run underground. You want to know where they are and have the surveyor notate that on the survey. There's also access easements that are involved. This is, I've had people that have called our office asking for information on dividing up property. Maybe they own a 10-acre plat of land and they want to build 10 1-acre lots. That sounds good and that's a great plan. But one thing you got to keep in mind, if there's not access to the road for those 10 lots that are going to be built, how are your new neighbors going to go to and from the road? An easement needs to be made up from the actual uh, lot that has access to the road. So those are things that may come up later on. Here's an example of a survey that we got not too long ago. Now this is I believe in the Canyon Lake area. You see all these lines. This is like lot 156 off of Fawn River Drive. You see all these lines that are on this property. There is a little opening right in the top that says lot 156. That's where I would think, from looking at it firsthand, that's where I think the building should be. But looking deeper into this, guess what? There's not very much room anywhere on this property for a building to be made. But if you go down to the end of the property, you see that in that shaded area, you can barely read it, but it says stucco and frame residence. That residence is built on a beyond the boundary setback lines and on an easement. Really, really crazy stuff. They would have never known that unless they got a survey. So this is something that you really want to know up front. This gives you great knowledge if you're going to share this with a person that's looking to buy some property and build on it later on, to understand where the easements are and know where the setbacks are. Very, very important. Here's a couple of other examples. Let's look at the example on the left-hand part of your screen. Now you see there that there's wood forms. This is actually a survey that we did back in February at our company. These forms were built prior to us going out and measuring them. Now, we notated on our survey that the wood forms were encroaching onto the easement. There's a 10-foot utility easement per the plat on the backside of that property. If the homeowner didn't know any better, they would have went ahead and poured concrete, which would give them a permanent foundation, which would be an issue later on down the line. Now, that was avoided because they got a form survey, so it showed them where the form was on the actual property, and it gave them the opportunity to move it. That's really, really good. Let's look at the example on the right hand side. Now this is a 1-story brick resident. If you notice just slightly, it is exceeding the building setback line. It's encroaching on the building setback line. Now, when these issues come up, what you can do to kind of resolve this is asking for a variance. Now, a variance allows you to build closer to the boundary line than normally stated on the survey. So who would you address for the variance? Usually it's the builders association or the governing city entity, whether it's the city or the county, wherever the home is located. That's who you would address to get a variance if you have exceeded the building setback lines. This is an issue, but it can be resolved by getting a variance.
So Johnny, if you get a variance for that, like through the homeowner, you just have to make sure that approval of the variance is sent in and you keep that with your survey documents, right?
Yes. Now, actually, because they approved that variance, it will be updated in the county records.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
And
Huh.
that's something to just to keep in mind, because once it's updated, the surveyor will make some notes on the survey itself stating that a variance was done and refer to the volume and the page number that was created? Great question.
That's
Okay, now
interesting because
let's
we had to in our subdivision, we had the HOA have to go through because they have to have so many feet, I guess, whatever it is. And someone was doing a pool and they went over the setback, but they gave it to him anyway because they still had enough clearance behind it.
that's great. That usually sometimes that doesn't happen. Let me give you an example. I had an agent reach out to me. They say, "Hey, Johnny, we're looking at this existing survey. My client wants to build a pool on this. Really loves the house, but there it's not. It doesn't have a pool. They want to put a pool." I noticed something that I had never seen. This is really crazy. I noticed a 45-foot saws water easement in the backyard. Now this was a neighborhood out by SeaWorld. So 45 feet was taking up almost the entire backyard. So I advised them, do not build a pool there. I had never seen anything like this. So I got with my RPLS. We got on Google Earth. We found the property and we followed the line. Do you know that this line went all the way to SeaWorld? Never seen anything like it. But there was a
That's
45
crazy.
foot water easement that took up almost the whole backyard.
That's
That would
crazy.
have
I
been
never
an
heard of that.
issue.
Yeah.
Would have built a pool. So really crazy stuff. So always check the survey. Make sure the survey, and if you don't have a survey, get an updated survey or a new survey. Okay, so easements do matter. They matter because it's part of your building plans. You got to know where your easements are. And just like we talked about, it could halt your plans on building your new pool or your garage that you want to build. Also, you want to make your buyer aware. Uninformed buyers are going to face a rude awakening if there's an issue that comes up. You don't want to be the bearer of bad news after that home is sold. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you let them know up front. Also, if there's any utility access, like I mentioned before, there could be some buried lines, and you put something on that on those easements that could affect your buyer later on down the road. Okay, let's move on. Here's some different types of easements that we may run into. Let's go through them really quickly. This is an easement by necessity. This is all automatically created when a property is landlocked. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. There has to be access to the road. So what if a person owns 10 acres? There's only they want to divide up into 10. You got to make sure that's a great plan, as I mentioned earlier, but you got to make sure that there's going to be an easement. Usually, those easements are called ingress egress easements. Ingress egress meaning in and out. So those are easements by necessity. There's also easements by prescription. These are created through continual, open, and unauthorized use of over a legally defined period. Now, there was a neighborhood that I was surveying near downtown. What what was strange about this neighborhood is there was supposed to be an alley in between um, both properties that face each other on the back line. Do you know what happened is one side of the block took up the entire alley. Now this is an older part of town off of San Pedro. Can't remember the name of the elementary, but I think it was not Smith. It was near San Pedro, near the downtown area, right near 35. Older part of San Antonio. San Pedro and Flores were the two big streets that were kind of in between this neighborhood. But anyway, um, never seen this before, but one side of the block took the entire alleyway, and I'm not talking about one neighbor did it. They all did it. The whole block did it. So we're surveying. We're trying to find the alley, and it's not there because everybody has taken ownership of that alleyway. I'd never seen an easement by prescription, but it does occur. It does occur. So just keep that in mind. Next thing we're talking about is ingress egress easements. Just talked about that. Provides the right of way to enter and exit another property. There's also utility easements, as we've been talking about. These belong usually to water companies, gas companies, or electric companies. So be advised about your utility easements. There's also drainage easements. These grant the right to direct water and runoffs. Man, something terrible just happened last week. We had all that runoff that caused the flooding. I've never seen that before in San Antonio, out in Perrin Creek, I believe it was. Tragedy happened. A lot of cars were swept away. But drainage easements are something to keep in mind. Right of way easements. Now, the right of way easement, um, when I was out surveying the field, we're trying to locate property corners or monuments. We would run into the neighbors because we had to go into their yards to locate these monuments. So a lot of people believe that their property started on the sidewalk, but in most cases that wasn't true. It started somewhere in the yard. The right of way is happens when one side of the property and the other side of the street, uh, everything in between that is known as the right of way. Now this is not start at the sidewalks. It actually starts at the property corners, which is actually buried in the ground. So those are something that keep in mind. Those are right of way easements. So what is the difference between an encroachment and an easement? An encroachment is when somebody is not authorized to come into your property and they do so anyway. I was doing some work out in the older part of San Antonio near the Pearl area. This was a area called as Dignity Hill. I was off of Sherman Street. I was surveying and I found a monument in the ground. One thing that I noticed about this monument, it was going through the quarter of a home. I'd never seen this before, but this was an older part of town. So what happened in this situation was that somebody owned three consecutive lots. Now, a few years ago, this area was like booming. So a lot that probably somebody could have purchased for 5,000, all of a sudden was going for 100,000 for a lot that was like 50 by 100. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But people were cashing in. So what took place is years ago, maybe grandma owned the home and they just built wherever. Code compliance didn't drive around and tell everybody where to build, so they just built wherever. These do happen, encroachments do happen a lot on older parts of San Antonio. So if you're doing work, if you have a listing in the older part of San Antonio, or if you have somebody that wants to look for a property in the older part of San Antonio, I would advise please look at your surveys before because there can be some encroachments that are occurring from your neighbors. An easement is authorized. It authorizes the use. It's a legal authorization of the use of that particular piece of that property, usually by, like we talked about earlier, a water company, a utility company, some type of utility company has the right to service that easement. So the benefit in the survey is that on that survey, especially if you're getting an updated survey or a new survey, you're going to know exactly if there's anything encroaching onto that property, that subject property, or it's going to also describe where the easements are located on that property. Really, really cool. So here's some examples of what should be on your survey. A lot of people ask, what should be on a survey? Here's some examples. Number one, we're looking for the surveyor's signature. If it doesn't have a signature, guys, it is not a legitimate survey. Another thing that should be on your survey, a surveyor should have their stamp or their seal on that survey. So always look for that stamp or seal. Surveys should also have a legend. On your survey, it's going to describe the property and it will have lines, symbols that describe different things on the survey. So you got to keep in mind that you have to it has to show where everything is on that survey. So just keep that in mind. Um, Next thing that should be on that survey is the north arrow. You got to know the direction. Where's that survey? Where's that property facing? The north arrow will give us direction and show us exactly where it's facing. The legal description should also be on that survey. So let me just give you an example. If you have somebody says, "Hey, I have an existing survey," and they give you that existing survey, and any one of these things are missing, it is not a legal survey because the surveyor's signature should be on there, their seal should be on there, the legend should be on there, and the north arrow should be on there. If you have a situation that comes up that you have a survey that's questionable, you can feel free to share it with Andrew. Andrew can share it with me, or you can let me know directly, and I'll take a look at it. That way, you know exactly what's on that. See, make sure we want to make sure that that survey is legitimate. Okay, I talked to you earlier about new builds. I want to get into a little bit about new builds because most of our incentives are going to happen on new builds. Ran into a community the other day out in the Live Oak area. There was a builder out there that was giving earnest money was $1, zero closing costs for veterans. That's a great deal. Andrew, you want to move to the northeast side? I know a realtor. Not just playing.
I
Andrew's a
got you
realtor.
guys.
So so in this case, in new builds, you want to know exactly where your boundaries are. This is more for like a custom new build, not for your builders like your Lennars and your Baser homes and your Perry homes. Maybe you have a custom builder you're working with. You want to know first of all where your boundary are, where your boundaries at. You want to ask number one, give me a copy of the boundary survey. So what's the boundary survey going to do? It's going to give you where your boundaries are. It's also going to have your markers set in the ground, your monuments. It's going to list and tell you where your monuments are and tell you how many monuments there are on your property. They should also be visibly marked. You want to make sure that you can see them because this is somebody's dream. They want to make sure they know exactly where their markers are. Next thing we want to look for in a new build, we want to ask for an envelope. So what does the envelope do? We got your boundary survey. Now you're going to start building. You got your floor plans or you got your building plan. The envelope is going to help the construction team know exactly where the exterior corners of that new project is. Why? You don't want to exceed the building setback lines. You don't want to build on those easements as we talked about earlier. I know I hit a lot on the easements and encroachments earlier. It's important. This is somebody's dream. So what happens if they had exceeded the building setback lines? We talked about a variance earlier. What happens if they're going and building on an easement? Guys, it all includes time. I heard a statement once. The number one killer of a real estate deal is time. Because anything could happen. Maybe you have spent a year getting this person ready to purchase their property. You put them through credit repair, you got them ready. All of a sudden, it's taking a long time. They see that nice, beautiful, shiny car or that nice, beautiful, shiny truck, and they go out and buy it before they close on that property. You don't want that to happen. Anything could happen when time is involved. So to avoid all that, we use the envelope to tell our builders where those invisible lines are on the property, where those easements are, where those setbacks lines are located. Real important stuff. The next thing we want to do, after we tell them, they're going to put up forms. So we go out, we measure those forms. Guys, you're on a new construction site when you're dealing with a new build. There's all these little bobcats running around. It could knock down those laths or somebody could move something. All of a sudden, the forms are built over the easement or over the setback lines. The form survey tells the builder that their forms are in the correct place before they actually pour concrete. Really good thing to know where your forms are. Lastly, we have our finished survey that shows all the improvements including the final home that's built on there, all of your flat work, your sidewalks, your driveways, your gazebo in the back, your swimming pool in the back. That's what your final survey does. So usually on a new build, we're gonna have 4 surveys done. We're gonna have, first of all, the boundary survey. We'll have the envelope done, the form survey, and lastly, your final survey, which shows everything, the completed home, like everything on there, everything's measured, making sure everything's supposed to be there, where it's supposed to be, and it's all checked and it's in compliance and it's ready to go. It's ready to be lived in. You look like a rock star. We look like a rock star. Title company looks like a rock star. Why? Because everybody's happy because they have their final new built home and they're ready to move in. All right. I'm going to open this up to questions. If you have any questions about anything that we discussed, or maybe there's a issue that you have going on currently, let me know if I can help you with anything.
I like it that thanks first, Johnny. Thanks. That was really good. I enjoy that when people have, because I have issues and some of our neighbors have that where they thought the line was wrong and then the builder built the fence, and when they had the next lot they were building on, they realized they didn't build it on the lot line. So they had to tear the fence down and do a whole new fence,
Yeah,
which
and
I
that could be pretty pricey.
yeah, so the
Yeah,
builder had to
to
suck
work
that up and
around
pay for all
this.
that.
Yeah, that's always good to know where your boundary line is. Or give you another example for those. This is being recorded for maybe somebody has a question down the line. Uh, for example, you're gonna build a new fence. You're gonna tear down your own fence, put your new fence up. I told you earlier. What if there was a mistake and nobody caught it because there was an error on the survey? It's always a good example and it's always a good practice to ask for, maybe you don't want to do the whole survey, but you want to do a boundary survey. On a boundary survey, one thing I forgot to let everybody know earlier, we show on a boundary survey everything that's 5 foot between the boundary and on the neighboring lot. So if there's any questions, it will show up on the boundary survey, and we will actually mark where the pins are located, and that will help the fence builder get that new fence done in a correct fashion.
That's how they should have done it because it was a pain in the butt. It was a big hassle for the neighbors. Yep.
Yes. Well, I know that there's somebody else on the line. Do you have any questions before we conclude with our class today? Just want to open up to you.
No questions at the moment. Good presentation though, for sure.
All right,
Outside of me having
awesome.
some spotty signal, but I'm pretty certain I'll have some questions later on down the road. So I'll definitely get with Andrew to get with you about them.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we got you,
Anything that you
Marcel.
need, actually, I'll go by, talk with your team. Andrew's a big help. I've known Andrew for many years. He's a great resource. So anything that we can do to help you or your team, let us know. We're here for you. We are an EMV partner also. We've partnered with them many times. They send us a lot of their survey requests. They have great closing team, and
Mhm.
Giselle's great also at what she
Yeah.
does. She prepares packets for people that are going to be doing open houses, get information on those properties ready to go. I mean, EMB got a lot going on for that for the agents that are in the field. So they're a great resource all around.
Appreciate you. Yeah, we got you guys.
Yes. And my number, let me just share my number with you real quick.
Please do.
My
Yeah.
number is 210-459-2373. Any questions that you have on an existing survey, any questions you have on a build that you're planning, please let us know. If I can't answer your question, we have 2 surveyors, RPLSs that are on our staff that are great. First of all, we have Gary Gibbons. He owned an engineering firm, Gibbons Land Surveying, for
Mhm.
many years. I went to a CCIM meeting, and I knew a lot of the people that were in attendance. There, a lot were in the commercial field. Guess what? They knew Gary Gibbons. They had Gary Gibbons in their phone. That made me feel really good. We just hired our second RPLS. His name is Eric Snell. His father owned Maverick Engineering. He
Wow.
just came to us from Pate Dawson, one of the top engineering firms in the city of San Antonio. Great team we have in place. Our field guys are great. Our drafters are awesome, a lot of experience. And we're just here. We want to make sure that your transactions go smooth. We partner with our title professionals, and we get you from start to finish on that project. So anything that we can do for you guys, please let us know. We're here for you.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate you coming on, Marcel.
Sorry, I had it muted and I started talking. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate you, man.